Welcome to the Creato Connection, where we broadcast programs of interest to leaders around the world who have made a commitment to operational excellence. You can find our broadcast schedule and enroll in any topic at www.creato.com/events. Producing these programs reflects our commitment to the industry, and we also hope they will introduce us to opportunities to work with leaders like you. You'll find contact information and related offers at the end of this program. The program you've joined is titled Tool of the Month Club, the IMR chart. Please note that this was a previously recorded event. We will start today with a brief overview of Creato Performance Solutions, followed by our featured program. The next voice you will hear is from CEO of Creato Performance Solutions, Mr. Ian Lazarus.
Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'd like to welcome you to our Tool of the Month Club today, which will highlight the IMR chart. My name is Ian Lazarus. I'm the President and CEO of Creato Performance Solutions and your host for today. And it would help if I remembered how to advance my slides. There we go. At Creato, we believe leaders should have all the tools they need to excel in their mission. And today we'll be speaking specifically about one of those tools. We've demonstrated a 7-to-1 return on investment to our clients based on a 10-year backward-looking study. But returns are not limited to financial gains. We're particularly proud of the fact that we've supported 3 Baldrige Award-winning organizations, and in each case, the C-suite acknowledged they could not have earned that prestigious recognition without our help. In a moment, I'll introduce our guest speaker, but first some advice on how to get the most from today's session. To provide you with the best audio experience, you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. But we actually do want to hear from you, so please direct your attention to the control panel provided by GoToWebinar, the platform that we use for these programs. The panel provides options for computer versus phone audio, a chat window, and a place to submit questions. Give us your questions there, and we will respond to them either within the control panel or our speaker will answer them as part of the program. If we're moving too fast or you have other time-sensitive feedback, send us a chat. You'll be sent a survey of today's program that you should receive by email tomorrow. The survey is only a few questions. Among these questions is whether you would like to receive the free tool that we will be offering today. If you're watching this program as a recording, you'll see contact information at the end of the program, and you can still request the tool from us. The Tool of the Month Club offers a new tool once per month over the course of the year. Attend every program, get every tool, and we will issue you a certificate of completion. Miss a session and you can make it up at the Creato Connection site once it has been posted there. What you see here is a small sampling of programs that are currently available. The programs on the connection are available 24/7, so we can work around your schedule and help you to become the leader that you wish to be. And now on to our featured program and to the introduction of our guest speaker. Wendy Novakoff is a professor of orthopedic surgery and public health sciences at the University of Virginia School of Medicine, where she teaches quality and performance improvement methodologies. She's also a faculty of the American College of Healthcare Executives, a certified Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, and a senior associate partner with us here at Creato Performance Solutions, a role she has held some 20 years. Wendy's interests include health services research, outcomes evaluation, and data quality and integrity, making it clear why we wanted to have her cover today's topic. She has published more than 90 papers and presented more than 100 abstracts at national and international conferences. I will now get out of the way that you can hear directly from my colleague and good friend, Wendy Novakoff.
Hi, and I wanted to talk about the individual and moving range chart today. It is one of the many control charts that are available to quality professionals. And this is one that I use probably most often because it does involve continuous data and allows us to look at trends over time. So first of all, I wanted to just talk basically about what control charts are, what an IMR chart is, which is the focus of this chart, of this talk, then some examples of them and how we use them in practice, And then we're going to go through the tool encompass of the IMR chart, which is something I think you're really, really going to enjoy having access to, because not very many programs other than statistical programs really can do this for people who are working in the field. So last month I talked about the histogram. This month we're talking about at least one of the control charts. And then next month we're going to be talking about fishbone diagrams, which are also known as Ishikawa diagrams. And he is the gentleman who kind of coined this term of having 7 basic quality tools in your basic toolbox if you're going to be looking at the performance in your organization. So if you can go to the next slide.
Whoops. Dear.
Oh, that's okay. So I wanted to start real quickly, and this is a story that was really quite interesting to me when I first heard it. Control charts were really developed in the early 1900s, around 1920-ish, by Walter Shewhart and some other people that he was working with, including Henry Ford. And they decided there needed to be a way to really measure how processes were working. What would be considered normal, what would be considered in control, hence control chart theory, and what would be out of control. So that rather than just having to respond every time there was a little bit of change in performance, that they could set limits around what performance should be and could be, so that they could really target where to put improvement efforts. And you'll note that there is a quote here from Walter Shewhart from 1931. They were doing most of their original experiments and observations about process behavior at Western Electric, which became part of General Electric, at the Hawthorne Works factory. The reason that that's important is most of us have heard of the Hawthorne effect. I always thought Hawthorne was a person. In fact, it is a place. And it means that people tend to react differently if they know they're being watched. And that's where this came from. So control chart theory, Hawthorne effect, and all those things kind of all come together. So remember our dear Mr. Shewhart whenever we talk about control charts. So if you go to the next slide, I wanted to show you what we're really talking about is understanding variation. That there is going to be variation in any process, especially a process that involves humans, because of the fact that we are human and we're not robots and we're not automatons, but that we need to have a way of putting some parameters to say what is common cause variation, the fact that today is Tuesday and it's different than Monday, and maybe Joe is working the line today and Sarah is working tomorrow. So what is common versus what really is considered special cause variation, something that we really need to investigate because it's leading to process outcomes that we don't really want or like. So
can I just point out that today's variation in PowerPoint performance is brought to you by Creato Performance Solutions.
Yes, actually, that's a really good point. Yes. Variation in process. So when we talk about control charts, this is something, I've spent my entire career in healthcare, and we have lots and lots and lots of data. Control charts were developed really for manufacturing and other industries, certainly because of when they were developed, but they are so incredibly helpful no matter what your industry is. And I'm really heartened to see them being used more in healthcare, because what we're trying to do is say what is normal, what is the boundary of normal process behavior, and then we can determine what is special. So when we're talking about a control chart, Shewhart and his colleagues put some statistical rigor around it. They decided that what would be considered normal was anything that fell within plus or minus 3 standard deviations of a process mean. I'm going to show you on the next slide kind of a graphical representation of that. In fact, here it is. So the upper control limit, the UCL upper control limit, is set at plus 3 standard deviations from the mean. The lower control limit is set at minus 3 standard deviations from the mean. So the implication of this is what is considered normal process behavior is 99.7% of all process behavior is considered normal. Now, that is a lot of this, it's a lot of the normal distribution, and it's a lot of process behavior. And so many of you are probably thinking, well, then it's going to have to be really, really, really rare to be considered special cause variation. And you're right. They did that on purpose, though. We might be watching the stock market go up and down on a daily basis. What we really are trying to do with control charts and with process behavior in general is look at the long term. So if you go to the next slide.
Well, I'm not going to do that yet.
Okay, is there a question?
Well, I wanted to ask you to point out, one of the reasons I really love this slide for training purposes, and thinking about our session last week on the histogram, for you to explain, please, why we have this little shadow next to the 3 sigma on the left side of this chart that looks like a sideways histogram.
Absolutely, it is a sideways histogram. And I'm going to have an example a little later in the presentation showing that the data on a control chart is very related to a histogram. And in fact, this particular histogram is showing you that control charts are based on the normal distribution. That's what that histogram is showing right now on this slide. So it's saying the process mean in a normal distribution would be that bump in the center. And then as you go to the tails, you should see fewer and fewer observations that fall in that area. So we're looking at the same kind of data that could be shown in a histogram as on a control chart, but the control charts, the purpose of it is to show behavior over time versus the histogram, which shows behavior in buckets. So it's aggregated as opposed to being something where time is important. This particular slide, which you'll be getting copies of these slides, is one of those sort of dog-ear pages when I work with students to just give you all the terminology. We've talked about control charts and lower and upper control limits, a little bit about common and special cause variation, but I want to draw your attention to the one in the middle, the thing called voice of the process. A lot of the people on this call maybe have experience in Lean or in Six Sigma. And in Lean and Six Sigma, we care a lot about voice of the customer. The customer is telling us what process behavior is appropriate and when there are going to be defects. Control charts, which predated Six Sigma and Lean and other methodologies, is based on the fact that the process is what the process is. We may not like it, we may not desire it, it may not be meeting our customer needs, but the voice of the process is what we are showing on a control chart. And that is a very important concept to remember, especially as we move forward. So, and this gets very well, hopefully, described in this particular slide, that when we're dealing with the control chart, we have control limits, and those give us the information about voice of the process. If we're talking about Six Sigma, we're talking about specification limits, we're talking about voice of the customer. So if you'll note here, there are 2 processes. In fact, the behavior of these 2 processes are exactly the same. May not look like it exactly on your screen, but I promise they are. But as you can see, process A has acceptable variation when evaluated against the spec limits, while process B, which is serving a different group of customers, suddenly has unacceptable variation because the spec limits are different. In both cases, the voice of the process is exactly the same. So voice of the process versus voice of the customer, incredibly important for you to know. The other thing I wanted to mention here is, I think I said that the IMR chart that we're going to be focusing on in Compass is one of many, many charts. In fact, there are hundreds of control charts, but there are 7 that are used most often. And I'm not exactly sure why 7 keeps coming up. Someone will have to tell me that. But this choosing the chart tool is actually something that we have in the Compass tool that I'll show you where that is. But depending on what you're measuring, whether it's attribute data or continuous data, yes, no data versus something that can be measured on a scale, and whether or not you're looking at centering versus variation. So I'm looking at a subgroup of one versus a subgroup of many. And then at the top box, I'm sure there are going to be other sessions that will talk about some of the attribute charts, but all of these are really very valuable. We just want to make sure that you're choosing the right chart to give you the voice of the process that will best describe what it is that you're observing.
And Wendy, you're putting a lot of really great stuff out there. I just want to remind the audience that you mentioned it, that yeah, the slides can be made available. We don't send them out to everybody. You would have to request them, but as you can see from what we've covered so far, there's a lot of really great reference material in here. So do let us know if you'd like to receive the deck today.
Another part of using control charts is really helpful, again, as most of the people that I work with in looking at control charts also have training in other methodologies. And one of the things I get asked all the time is, how do I interpret this chart, and therefore what am I supposed to do? So we look at a control chart and we say, is it stable or not stable? And in control chart theory, stable for this type of chart is anything that falls within 99.7% of the entire normal distribution. So we're not going to get an unstable chart very often. If for some reason it is unstable, then we know we have some sort of special cause variation, and we're going to do root cause analysis. So for example, we're obviously dealing with a lot of special cause variation with COVID and how it is affecting our hospital volumes, whether or not our schools are open, and so on. We can pinpoint something very specific that has happened, and we can decide how we're going to strategize to get rid of that special cause if we can, or to understand the realities of that special cause. More often, because of how, if you can go back just a second.
Yep.
More often, we're going to see something that's stable. The performance is what the performance is, and it is in control. That is where other methodologies are really helpful. We take a common cause strategy and say, our voice of the process is not meeting our voice of the customer. So we're going to do some more work and really do process analysis to try to understand where the variation is, where we might not be meeting our customer needs, and exactly how to get those in line. Now, if we're going to go talk about actually this chart, this IMR chart. So it actually has two separate charts that measure variability. They both measure variability. The top one is the individuals. So that is displaying individual data points over time. Today there were the average, or the number of minutes it took to get to my appointment was 82, and the next day it was 80, and so on. The moving range is the bottom part of the chart, and that it's a little less intuitive, but it displays the absolute difference of the second measurement minus the first measurement. And it's a way of looking at inter-item variation. So not just what are you seeing in an absolute difference, but what are you seeing in variation of your observations over time. This is really useful if you're doing a Six Sigma or Lean project in the measure phase, so you're looking at the as-is data, and in the control phase, where hopefully you've made an intervention and you are looking at whether or not it's made a change in the performance, the voice of the process in your data. So a couple of things about the IMR chart. Your data have to be numeric. This isn't about text data. This isn't a Pareto chart. The data also have to be continuous. And sometimes this requires a little bit of discussion with somebody who might have a little more experience with this, but you want this to be data that would make sense for you to get a mean and a standard deviation. So not counting data and not attribute data. We also need to make sure we're looking at individual data points and not some group or subset of data or average of a group of data. There are other charts for that. This one is for individual data. So another question I get a lot is, well, how many observations do I need to have a really good and valid chart? And as a rule of thumb, about 20 to 30. There are reasons for that that involve the central limit theorem. And if you're really interested, then I'm sure we can get you some more information on that. But having 20 to 30 will allow you to have enough time, enough spread to really have a good understanding of what the process is doing. If I have monthly data, gosh, it would be great to have 3 years worth, because I want to see how things maybe go in cycles across a year. If I'm looking at weekly data, 3 to 4 quarters, 6 months at the minimum, we really don't want to see control charts that only have 5 or 6 data points. We really need to have around 20 to 30 to make them really valid. So in practice, I wanted to kind of get back to this idea of histograms versus control charts and some other things that you might see in practice. I showed this next slide when I was talking about histograms, that histograms don't consider the influence of time, but IMR charts and control charts in general absolutely consider influence of time. So the questions that are on this slide are answered very differently. What is variation, for example, in a COVID death rate per 100,000 people in the country, versus what is the shape and spread of the distribution over the entire state? So the first one, we would use an individual moving range chart. So we're having a death rate on one day, a death rate on the second day, and so on and so on. And the second one would be better shown as a histogram because we're aggregating data over space and time. So the next slide will show you, these are the exact same data sets. The histogram on the left is showing you overall shape and spread of the distribution, while the eye chart, that's the top of the IMR chart, is showing you the variation per day. And hopefully you can see how those two graphs would help you interpret the answers to your questions just a little bit differently. Exactly the same data. The next slide shows you a full IMR chart. This is one that I took from a project that I work on pretty normally here at my hospital, looking at how many minutes we are delayed in every OR room every day. So we take this measurement and then we can plot it over time. You'll see that the observations are down at on the x-axis of each of these, and we can see what kind of performance are we seeing over time. Now, you might look at this and say, wow, there's a little bit of variation, but there's not a lot of variation. You all seem to be doing really well. You have one observation that is outside of that lower control limit. And this is where it's important to understand the data that you have. I would really like there to be no delay in getting my cases started in an operating room, because they're very expensive resources and very scarce resources. In this case, I'm really happy to see something that would be below my control limit, therefore out of control, and I would like to see what they did to do it so well. Another way of looking at this is, if the average delay is 20 minutes, even though the voice of the process is saying, my process is pretty much in control with the exception of that one data point, it's not meeting my needs. It's not meeting my voice of the customer, which is saying 20 minutes on average as the delay is too much. So at that point, I would really want to spend time looking at the process, doing process analysis, and determining how can I make this better. The moving range at the bottom is another way of looking at this, that even though it kind of seems like there isn't a lot going on, in the individuals over time, you're seeing that there is a lot of movement, sometimes up to 16 minutes between observations, so that some are right around 20, but others are right around 36. And so understanding why there's variation within the same room or within the same process, that's really what we can tell with that moving range.
Wendy,
So yeah.
would it be a stretch to would it be a stretch to say that we think we might be looking at some cycles in this
We
data?
could be looking at cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be definitely something that I would want to look at. For example, I know this is over time, but are there certain rooms or certain teams that do things differently? And so if I start seeing really big jumps in the moving range, that might say I really need to understand what's going on within this group as opposed to just between groups. So it's another way of trying to look at it. In Compass itself, again, I'm really fond of this tool because it's hard to do control charts in Excel without a whole lot of programming. So the IMR chart itself looks like this. I will tell you a couple of things. Always when you get these charts from Compass, you're going to need to enable macros and get rid of some of the security settings. There's going to be 2 warnings usually. And this is what you're going to see once you have enabled macros and enabled the spreadsheet to work, the overall view of this. If you go to the next one, we're just going to kind of show you quickly, you're going to want to fill in the details. You're going to want to say who did this, what is the analysis that we're doing, and then you'll notice under traceability, you have the option to do a date or a time or some other description of what each observation is. Depending on the version that you get, you may get the US version of dates, which is month, day, year, or you could get the non-US version, which is very common everywhere else, which is day, month, year. You just want to make sure you know which one you're putting in to make sure that it makes sense. So step 2, there is a spreadsheet that's very easy to use that you just put your data in. For this, I put in every day, I put in a measurement of how long my turnover time was. You can copy and paste from another spreadsheet, and it will expand if you have more rows. Then I think it starts out with 25, but it'll expand as you go on. And then you, as you're putting in the data, you will get the individual chart and the moving range chart that will show up automatically. That you can see here, based on the data that I put in, that you have the upper control limit. These are calculated as plus or minus 3 standard deviations. You can see they're gray, the upper and lower control limit. The green kind of line, I guess sort of lime colored, shows the average. And then the blue data is showing individual movement across.
Sorry, whoops, sorry. Wendy, there was a question, I think this might be a good time to throw it out at you from the audience. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, there is an Excel add-on in the market that has a wizard function where the program automatically identifies the type of data and selects the appropriate control chart. Any feedback on that? So is that like when you I'm curious myself, Excel add-on, is that something you buy or it's the add-on that comes with Excel? I think it's the latter, right?
It does come with Excel, but I think that a lot of what you're talking about is something. There's a quality toolbox that you can buy for Excel. And I think that it absolutely is a great tool, but it's not something that is automatically included with all versions of Excel. So the wonderful thing is, I think if you go to the next slide, we have that. Oh, these are just options. I wanted to show you the chart type guide is what we have in Compass. These are the major instructions.
Right here.
And here is the selecting the right chart.
Right.
So yes, it absolutely is available as an add-on. But with this tool, in case you have an older version of Excel, or if your company doesn't have the Excel add-on, this is in the IMR chart from Compass Tool. That you would ask the question, do you have attribute or continuous data? Depending on how you answer that question, it'll ask you how many data points per group. And then over on the right side, it'll give you a recommendation of which chart to use. This recommendation is about the big 7 that I talked about in that earlier slide. So it gives you the guidance to say which chart do you need. And if for some reason you're using the wrong chart, that's okay. There are other charts available.
And so the other, if I can just tag on to your comment there, the other benefit of this tool and other tools that are offered as part of the Tool of the Month Club over other commercial packages is that they're very portable. So by that I mean you get the tool, you modify the tool, and you can share the tool with your peer group, and they can access the features. Whereas many, as far as I know, the commercial software packages that some of you may be familiar with, they're not necessarily portable. You have to, you may get a license, but if the other users in your peer group don't have the same license, right, they're not going to be able to access the features. So that's, I think, one of the things that we like about our Compass tools is that they're very portable. You can share them with other folks, and other folks can gain the value from them.
So there's a lot of features in here. If you move forward, there are advanced settings as well. So anytime that you're having an issue or you want to go back, there is a way to escape back to the main page. But the advanced settings are really very nice, because one of the questions I get a lot is, I don't like those control limits. They're not really helpful to me. Or I don't like the scale that's being shown on the chart that I'm getting automatically. So if you click on either the default or the override, there's some instructions here. And if you move to the next slide, let's say I don't like the control limits that were calculated for me, I can override them and put in my voice of the customer limits. So I now have a different scale. You can see the graph updated, but I can change all of these things. The default is traditional control chart methodology, but if I do want to override things, I can. And this is especially helpful when I'm working on improvement projects, where I can say, yeah, voice of the process, but I also need to see voice of the customer. Now, this is also important if for some reason, look at how there's very little variation in this process. And you saw that in the original. But what if my voice of the customer is saying 80 is too long? Then I can change my upper and lower control limits to really graphically show what my process is doing in relation to my customer requirements. So that's a pretty nice feature. And then the other features in the next slide, there are many things that we can do to change colors. You can add chart elements. I tried to show the ones that are available. You can have trend lines, error bars, labels, etc. So most of the functionality that you would have in building a regular chart in Excel, if you don't have the Excel macro or the Excel add-on, are available in this tool. So I would really like to see, for whatever reason, my company colors are orange and blue, and instead of gray, which I'm finding hard to see, I want to change the colors of the upper and lower control limits to something else. This is available.
So I would make them maize and blue, but apart from that, I really do like the this feature where you can set your own spec limits, because in many projects that I've been involved in, my audience may not be really sensitive to the implications of plus or minus 3 standard deviations. They may have some other they may even be arbitrary spec limits, but they're things that have sort of developed as cultural norms in the organization of where they feel they need to be or want to be. Maybe they have been monitoring benchmarking data, and they aspire to meet a benchmark or meet or beat a benchmark. So these are all situations where the ability to override the default can be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And for me, always the issue with control limits and control charts in general is to understand current state of the process, which may or may not match what my customer wants or what my business is demanding, but that becomes the important comparison. That you want to say, here's what we're doing now, and do we need to take a common cause strategy, which is doing process analysis and really understanding why there's variation, versus something that's really special cause that is a completely different way of looking at improvement strategies. So that's the end of this topic. I do want to remind everybody that this is available on demand, and we do have another tool coming up in February. It looks like February 11th at the same time at 1 p.m. Eastern on Fishbone and 5 Whys. Also very, very, very important tools in your toolbox. My contact information and the general contact information is on this slide, and there will be a Compass overview video after this. But I would like to open it up if there are other questions.
Wendy, thanks. That's a great presentation. I always learn from you when we are able to get you on these programs. So folks can still submit questions if there are any, but I don't see any yet. And I'd just like to remind the audience, we're committed to doing these programs in 45 minutes or less. 45 minutes is our upper spec limit, and we were able to get in under that spec limit today. So that's a small victory, but not so small thinking about the technical issues that we encountered at the very beginning. So I want to thank you for your patience there. We're in business to do business, and part of our business is providing not only the tools, but also the training on how to use them and how to conduct competent project management, whether it's Lean Six Sigma or other methodologies. So do reach out to us if you have an interest in learning more about how we go about that. If you're a member of the club, you're getting these emails announcing the programs, and I just wanted to point out we've decided to combine 2 of the future sessions into one for next month. So the Fishbone and 5 Whys were separate at one point in time, but we can get through the 5 Whys quickly enough that we're gonna merge them in with next month's program. We have been having some technical difficulty with standing up the Compass video at the end of these programs. So rather than me trying to make that work again, I'm going to send you a link in the follow-up information that will direct you to that video. I have a suspicion that many of you have seen that already. The Compass platform coordinates, tracks, and manages all improvement activity in an organization. It includes upwards of 50 project management tools. Just a few of them are being introduced as part of this program for free, really to give you kind of a free trial of what the rest of the product might look like. But Compass also includes online training in Lean and Six Sigma. It includes a very robust project management platform to manage your projects. It includes a Gantt chart. And I mean, I could go on and on about all the different features of Compass, but they'll be summarized nicely for you in that 5-minute video. So hopefully, if you haven't seen it, you'll take an opportunity to do that. And then we'd be delighted to schedule a demonstration for you. So with that, I'm going to close the program. Thank you again for being a part of our club. Our club is growing, and we're really excited and delighted to have this opportunity to provide value to our marketplace. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you again probably on February 11th. All right, bye for now.
Welcome to this brief demonstration of the award-winning Compass Quality Management System. Compass will literally put improvement on autopilot in your organization, completing more projects faster, and projects with greater returns. Your team will be given the tools, support, and direction necessary to drive your efforts at operational excellence and business transformation. In other words, no matter how you look at it, Compass pays for itself. No other comparable application contains as many features or as much value for the dollar. Let me show you some of the features of Compass that will support breakthrough improvement in your organization. Users can quickly add an idea to Compass by indicating the anticipated value to your organization and the specific business case. Our impact risk matrix will frame the business opportunity with little effort, while the system prioritizes the idea for comparison to others. From the very first screen, Compass improves employee engagement while creating a robust pipeline of opportunities. And by the way, most of the fields you see here are actually customizable. Leverage employee feedback in Compass by comparing perception to reality for improvement opportunities. Users can comment and rate ideas, while management compares workforce support to objective criteria. Your management and quality team can review the merits of each idea and resource those with greatest potential. Dynamic sorting helps you evaluate the range of opportunities more effectively than a static spreadsheet. In other words, Compass helps you to not only do things right, but to do the right things. It's no wonder Compass has been recognized as the #1 idea management system compared to over 75 other applications on G2Crowd.com. Management can send feedback to users from within Compass. Show your staff that you appreciate their initiative. Ask others for the information you need. You'll be promoting collaboration and establishing accountabilities up front while communicating your support. Once an idea is approved, Compass will help drive your project. This becomes the handoff within Compass from management to staff. Compass makes it easy to do the right thing by guiding the user through project work, providing tools and support, and a place for documentation. Need a little direction before performing a value stream analysis? Tell Compass to get me the tool, or even get me the training. Jump into the Lean online training available also from ASQ, now incorporated within Compass. This is a highly evolved program including professional audio, exercises, learning games, and case studies. At any time, send an updated A3 report to your team and stakeholders, and Compass will not only create the report, it will drop it into an email for you. Compass is compatible with PDCA, Lean, Six Sigma, ISO 9001, and any improvement method you use in your organization. Compass is a high performer for enterprise project management on G2 Crowd, and it's one of this year's top quality management systems according to CIO Review. Compass includes the entire body of knowledge for Lean to support staff new to improvement work, and it even integrates readily with SharePoint for your own intranet, enabling you to create a turnkey collaborative environment. Compass offers a highly flexible user-driven reporting portal. You can view reports in an A3 format or reports with a global view. Reports offer the ability to monitor all activity, progress against goals, and return on investment. Compass puts improvements on autopilot by automatically advising staff if their projects are ahead, behind, or missing data. Finally, we can't talk about Compass without showcasing our robust tools. Compass will literally interview each user and build a tool based on your specific needs, allowing you to create everything from a value stream analysis, Gantt or control chart, to computerized simulation. Compass can replace annual spending on dozens of disparate applications in many organizations. Bring order to chaos as Compass guides your team through the completion of projects, and management achieves true line of sight into all improvement activity in the organization. Finish more improvement projects, finish projects faster, and finish projects with stronger results. All within the guidance of your Compass. Compass.